Hello everybody, welcome to another Patreon lesson. We are going to continue our exploration into Design Informed, the basic course at the Bauhaus. Specifically, we are going to continue our exercises in color. If you remember from the last lesson, I had us create Itten's color wheel, and we ended with this painted color wheel and this one made of collaged elements. I've emphasized that we need to keep doing these exercises, like basically do multiple iterations of these exercises, and I practice what I preach. So in the interim, I actually did this smaller gouache study, and the reason I want to start this lesson with these color wheels that we did earlier is that you'll notice that even between what we assume is a uniform color wheel, that there are some differences in the versions that I did at different times. So for example, you'll notice this green is just a little bit, which is supposed to be our core blue yellow green, is a little bit lighter. This yellow is a little more golden than this yellow. This violet seems to have more blue, whilst this violet seems to be a little more reddish. Also, this blue right here seems to be more of a cobalt, whereas that one seems to be more of an ultramarine. So even in these iterations, we find variations within our own practice, even when we're dealing with something that's supposed to be as uniform as a color wheel. Which, again, remember Albers said that color is the most relative medium in art. That being said, I want to go on to our next exercise, which we will be using a different color wheel, but one that was designed by Itten. And it's right here. This is the what he calls the color star. If you can't make it out perfectly, don't worry, I'm gonna upload this image up with the lesson. But we can see that we have something similar to the color wheel. We have white in the center, we have blue, red, and yellow at this kind of triangular form with these colors at the vertices. Then we have green, orange, and violet forming another triangle between each one of the primaries. And then we have a tonal scale, so white in the center and then going out to black in the edges. If for me, drawing this freehand was kind of a pain. So I used my printer and I cut out the shape, and then then I can know where the center was. I cut out the center of the white. You can use that with do that with an X-Acto blade or with scissors. Now, why the color star? He only mentions it like in a brief sentence in his book, but he mentions that this will eventually become a color globe, so a sphere. And you'll see me actually struggle with how to cut that and do that correctly in the time lapse. But I'm going to show you the time lapse of me creating this color star or filling it in, and then actually creating the color globe. And then I'll introduce some commentary. I usually let the time lapses be quiet, but I run into some troubles and I want to talk through some of the difficulties I had in creating the color globe. All right, here we go. I'm going to narrate our time lapse here. This part doesn't really need it. It's pretty straightforward. You can see me filling out the segments of the color wheel, or in this case, the color star. As I mentioned earlier, while this one exercise will give me a lot of understanding and appreciation for color, the real payoff comes in doing multiple iterations of this exercise. And this one, in terms of filling out all the different color segments, is a little more lengthy than the other exercises I show you all. But this one is really worth it. And again, those color differences will become highlighted as you do multiple iterations of this. Now here's where I wanted to narrate. You can see me cutting the edges with an X-Acto knife, and I left these little triangular tabs on the end of the points of the star because I thought I'd be able to glue the tabs when I folded the star all the way in. That didn't actually work out. So what you have to do is you have And also the X-Acto blade wasn't working out very well either because I'm using a thicker watercolor paper. So what I end up doing is cutting off the points of the star and using a circular piece of blue tape to anchor all the endpoints of the star to create this sphere. All right, now that you saw my uncoordinated fingers struggle to make this delicate paper object, we have our finished product. If I had any complaints on what I've executed, see these white lines on the edge of the paper, those are a bit distracting, and if I had cut those a little bit cleaner, then perhaps it wouldn't be as distracting on this darker side. All in all, though, this is a pretty cool idea. So we have our color, what we always consider, like, for example, a flat dimensional schematic of color. Now we actually have a three-dimensional object for our color and tonal scales. Although this one is somewhat structurally imperfect. We'll put that back there. So what we end up with is a kind of loaded object. These color spheres actually have a long history in the history of painting. Specifically, one of the first color spheres was made by a German painter named Otto Runge in about 1810. Then later on, Alfred Munsell would make his famous, or maybe not famous because most people don't know about it, but his three-dimensional color system, which will become the basis of CIE Lab's color system, which influences Adobe and all our contemporary computers. And while those kind of mathematical models are fairly intriguing in regards to color, I think for our purposes we're more concerned with what kind of objects and manipulations we can use to better understand color. To that end, I mean, it may be interesting to do this in a black and white tonal scale, or in a monochrome, or maybe do it only in neon colors so that we can further explore these unique color relationships. But I recommend doing multiple iterations of these. It'd be curious to see like how big you could get this. What would happen if you did like a beach ball sized one of these? Or what other shapes could you do? I think maybe the next one I try will be a cylinder. If I do that, I'll definitely post that on there. All in all, I found this to be a fairly helpful exercise, especially this idea of like just seeing it in rotation is something kind of mesmerizing about it, although mine's falling apart. Instead of blue tape, next time I'll probably use a PVA glue, cut a circular paper disc, do some PVA or any kind of like decent paper glue, maybe even Elmer's, and then affix them all more permanently. I use painter's tape because it's easy to pull off and won't damage the paper. But thank you for tuning in to another lesson, and I look forward to seeing what you all make.